privilege to introduce the person of eminence, Professor Dr. K. Muthuchelian. Professor Dr. K. Muthuchelian is a world-renowned biology scientist with more than 30 years of teaching and research experience at different hierarchical levels, including professor, head and chairperson, vice chancellor. Currently, he is serving as the Pro-Vice Chancellor at the Anand Sagar University, Bangalore. He obtained his doctoral degree from the School of Biological Sciences, Madurai Kamaraj University, Madurai, India. Subsequently, he had his postdoctoral research from University of Ancona, Italy. He has been conferred with prestigious Doctor of Science in recognition of his research accomplishment on biomass resource management and technology. He has been conferred with several fellowships from prominent foreign and Indian scientific societies, including International Energy Foundation Canada, the National Academy of Biological Sciences, Paleobotanical Society, Zoological Society of India, National Environment Study Academy and Indian Applied Association for Microbiologists. He has guided over 81 students for research and 4 scholars for postdoctoral program, and 43 candidates have been awarded with a PhD under his supervision. In these 3 decades of research experience with more than 30 research projects with leading international and national organizations including IUCN in Switzerland, ICTP Italy, University of Reading UK, EPA USA, BSA UK, Euroscience France, Third World Network Malaysia, the World Water Council France, the Global Mountain Biodiversity Assessment Switzerland, Instituto di Agrario San Michele Taranto Italy, and Nitrogen Fixing Tree Association Hawaii USA. MAB program and National Biodiversity Authority MOEF and CC. He has published more than 220 research articles, 25 books, 42 book chapters and more than 500 popular scientific research articles in SCI journal and magazines to attain his H index 23. Notably, he has authored 4 books of Uyir Virimam, Biodiversity, the Current Status and Management in Tamil, and these books graciously was released by Honorable Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, former President of India, and His Excellency Dr. K. Roshaiya, the Governor and the Chancellor Government of Tamil Nadu, widely appreciated by peace of scientists in the arena. Besides, he also involved in the steering committee in 12th State Planning Commission, Government of Tamil Nadu, and expert member in the Puducherry State Higher Education Council. He served as the chairman of NAGPIR team visits in many institutions across India and an active member for different panel and committees in UGC, DST, MNREC, MOEF and CC. He received 40 prestigious international national awards into his academic credentials, including the first Indian science honored with the prestigious award by University of Ancona, Italy in 1998, Lifetime Achievement Award in the Environmental Science, Food and Nutritional Science and Microbiology, twice the Merit of Excellence Award, Eminent Scientist Award, and Professor S. Kanayan Memorial Award. Tamil Nadu's Best Scientist in the Environmental Science by TNS CST, the Best Scientist in the Environmental Management by Department of Environment, Government of Tamil Nadu, and he was awarded as the Best Vice Chancellor Award twice by the Indian Red Cross Society Tamil Nadu, and consequently awarded with Best Tamil Book in 2014 for Uyir Virimam and in 2015 for Nulagam Arivalagu Nulaivail in Tamil. The library, a gateway to knowledge by the Department of Tamil and Culture, Government of Tamil Nadu. He has brought academic and administrative reforms for vibrant administration and rigorous academic initiatives in his academic positions at various levels like Vice Chancellor, Pro-Vice Chancellor, Registrar, Controller of Examiner, In charge and Coordinator for the University with potential of excellence, a grant of 40 crores, member syndicate, Senate and Academic Council at higher educational institutions. During his tenure at Periyar University, in addition to creating a corpus fund of 80 crores, he established 5 new departments, 6 research centers, 4 constituent colleges and 3 government colleges. In addition, he has established several centers, cells including All India Civil Service Examination Free Coaching Center, Health Center, Women's Welfare Center, NETSCT Free Coaching Cell and Internal Quality Assurance Cell for the benefit of students' community. Further, he explored the possibility of establishing Meta University, the concept of benefiting the students and the scholars to utilize the facility from other institutions. During his tenure at Periyar University, more than 22,000 students have been benefited to the Career Counseling and Placement Cell. In the domain of introducing innovative frontier and academic programs and courses, Dr. Muthuchelian is in the forefront in the higher education learning institutions in the state. Indeed, he has a long-term vision for transforming the academic and administrative systems with mission, mode and approach. His work stands as a monument to the individual. Above all, he is a kind person with noble heart, ready to extend his helping hand to the needy at any time. He has earned a lot of encomium from various people, professionals, colleagues, and from the students also. It may not be out of place to mention here that he is the role model for the young scientist who aspires to reach a higher level. I now request Professor Dr. K. Muthuchelian to enlighten us with the knowledge.
Welcome to YouTube channel. Make Science Easy with Dr. KMC. If you like this lecture, please subscribe. Today we are going to see the interesting lecture on the plant genetic resources and genetic erosion. So it is one of the most important one, because we need three basic, the essential requirement of a human being: the food, the shelter, and then to live the world. So here first one, the priority is given to the food. So the food, it means the food comes from the various the plant based genetic resources. So what is mean the plant genetic resources? So here the plant genetic resources is required for the world food security, and mainly from the food and agriculture, the crops. And here the crops means, I think it's a variety of the purpose it has been serving for the food, especially for the human being, and then also to the other animals. So first one is the horticultural crops. In this, the main category, we have the fruit and nut crops, vegetables category, food and legumes. Then third one is the roots and the tubers categories of the plant genetic resources. The medicinal plants, aromatic and ornamental plants. Again, all together, which greatly, contribute to satisfy the food security and to integrate and diversity dietary needs. That is meant for that, and it needs to the mankind. In the recent decades, the awareness of a high degree of the genetic erosion, that all leads to the establishment of the seed and field banks. So it's located in a different global level. When we live in the developed countries are having only very poor in genetic resources, of course, and then in the developing countries, rich in the genetic resources. So the developed and the developing countries are differ in their the richness, I can say the constituents of the genetic resources are varied. So even more recent is the concept of dynamic of these plant genetic resources should be conserved in situ conservation, which allows the conserved material to evolve. So recently, and many research and technology have been neglected, especially for the minor and underutilized horticulture species in developing countries, and for preserving environmental and socio-economic fabric in marginal areas of the developed countries. So realize this situation, we have given importance to the various one. Number one, we would like to see, first category is the horticultural genetic resources. So here the plant genetic resources for the food and agriculture is mainly for the biological wealth, which is indispensable for securing world food supplies, mainly to alleviate the poverty, and then for naturally to the sustaining the rural development. So these plant genetic resources contribute to people's livelihoods, as I mentioned, by providing food, medicine, feed for the domestic animals, fiber, clothing, amenity, shelter and energy, and all together which contribute mostly to the food security. So within the plant kingdom around nearly 3,50,000 species in the plant kingdom have been classified so far, and out of which 70,000 are considered as the edible plants, which are consumed by the human. Even through mankind has utilized only about 7,000 of these for the mainly for the food purpose. And here 30 plant species account for nearly 95% of the world given calories in the form of the proteins. That's why we have given a great importance for the food security, which includes the different horticultural crops, as I mentioned. From that, horticultural crops mainly potato, the sweet potato, cassava, yam, beans, coconut, and other tropical fruits, and including onion, taro, and bambara groundnut, breadfruit, and then contribute to the food security for both the specific regions, either developed or the developing countries. So here, which includes again other crops. So other crops which mainly improve the nutritional value of the human diet, especially the vegetables and fruits, and due to their content rich of the vitamins and minerals, and all important to the dietary diversification for the promotion of the health, and then also which includes the medicinal plants. So a potentially useful crop species, why we call this potential? It means it attracts the reason from the agricultural research is the financial constraint on the research which contain, and then funding agencies which are not in favor of work on crops that are unproven potential and unknown commercial value. So we have been given only thrust to the potentially used and usable crops. That's why we have been called as this one. And to solve the problems associated with the increasing agriculture, the biodiversity, so the agriculture science should be pay more attention to the valuable indigenous species grown locally for centuries. So in such case, India, we can say one of the tropical countries, and we are rich in the sources of the sources. Thus, this diversification should include minor and underutilized species in developed countries, and minor and again underutilized and subsistence crop species in the developing countries. So there are variety of the species which are having a value of all those things. So next is the horticultural crops. Horticultural crops are having the 5 different the major types. Number 1 is the fruit and nut crops. Number 2, vegetables. Number 3, food legumes. 4th, roots and tubers. And lastly, the ornamental and medicinal groups. So what are the centers of the main origin of all these the categories of the plants? So first one is one of the first scientists to become aware of the importance of the plant genetic diversity or the plant genetic resources, the great Russian, the plant explorer and genetist, that is Nikolai J. Vavilov. So he is the first one who identified the importance of the plant genetic resources. So world the horticultural species they originated in the southeastern Asia, and most of them are the main fruit. And then comes to the vegetable crops, which originated mainly from the east and west Asiatic center and Mediterranean region of the world. Then the roots and tubers are mainly from the tropical region in Central and American countries. So these are the country of origin of the various crop species with reference to the plant genetic resources. So major crops such as potato, apple, orange, grapes, banana and tomato, which are all originated from very different parts of the world and are now grown over vast land areas, often extending into altitude and latitude that bear a little resemblance or to their original habitat. So this adaptation of the major crop species to different locations and then to the different growing conditions. So initially by individual farmers and more recently by plant breeders and research institutions responsible for the genetic improvement program they conducted in the various vegetable crops. Then on the other hand, the minor underutilized species protection areas mostly correspond to their original centers of diversity. For example, the olives and capers and carob, fig, strawberry, and then tree and other they maintain small fruits, all from the production which are related to the Mediterranean or the temperate areas. So here the genetic diversity is contained in different types of the genetic materials, such as number one in quote we call it as the populations, or in kinetic the material or the genetic material such as population, land races and the stable varieties. So then what is meant by the land races? So here the land races are called farmers varieties, which are heterogeneous in population of the crop plants grown by the traditional farmers. And then modern varieties. So what are the modern varieties? Modern varieties are obtained by the plant breeding or genetically homogeneous populations highly adapted to modern the uniform agricultural management techniques. So this is now in practice all over the world with some manipulation in the genetic makeup, and then this genetic uniformity is the result of the intensive selection for the superior genotype that best needs for the modern production and the requirement of the market value. And then next we would like to see the section called the major temperate fruit trees. So here most of the modern and then major temperate fruit trees which are ex situ living collections of major fruit and are mostly in the countries of the interested in these regions. So here the genetic diversity present in these locations. The common locations are present of the fruit tree collections, which includes the storage number one, which means that high cost involved in the establishment and maintenance of the living field collections around the world, and then already protocols for the in vitro collections have been developed for some of the species, which includes the grapes, strawberry, and then apples, etc. The common limitations at present of the fruit tree collections are we have the characterization. So up to now most of the characterization data have been achieved using the morphological markers and agronomic trials from the various agroclimatic conditions. So around the world several projects are underway to build the genome maps. For example, the European Union projects are the Brunus genome mapping and the Malus genome mapping with reference to the apple. So what are the collection activities with reference to the plant genetic resources is number one, the old representative collectors, that means the indigenous collection, and the modern commercial cultivars which are safely maintained in the ex situ collections. So while gaps have been identified primarily for the germplasm or the wild relatives of the cultivated fruit, these are some of the barriers in the collection of the germplasm in the wild relatives which are equal resemblance to the conventional the fruit trees. So minor temperate and nut fruit trees, which includes are the low income crops, and little genetic improvement work has been conducted to improve the existing cultivars so far. So here these crops are still maintain a wide genetic base that make them suitable for cultivation in the marginal areas. So the collection and conservation activities are only recent. So recently we have been talking and then we have been doing research in the on-farm trials, and still remains much to do fill the remaining gap area in the existing collection. So altogether, collection expeditions should be urgently made in the different existing ecosystem, mainly to collect the wild genetic materials adapted to the various climatic conditions. So the conservation, the characterization and utilization of these the minor the horticultural species is an important objective, allowing diversification of the agro production mainly for the food by the use of the greater number of the species and cultivars with reference to the disease and pest tolerance. And here last of the section I think we have discussed about the temperate one, and what about the subtropical or tropical. So subtropical and tropical fruit the nut species are available in plenty in developing countries, and here only recently with increasing tourism in tropical countries and the commercial exchange with the developed countries have developed the fruit growing areas of the tropical fruit and the nut species for the exploitation or utilization. So here, which includes the mainly in the Southeast, Asia, Central America, which includes the Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Ecuador, and Brazil, and much work has been done on the tropical fruits and nut species. So one of the important the fruit yielding trees is the musa. As a musa is an important crops in the developing world in terms of a cross value production in terms of the economy. For food security around the world are banana, plantain, coconut, and mango, which has a considerable high income commodities, especially for the tropical, including the Indian subcontinent. So here, the collecting expeditions have been made to gather the wild material of the musa. In fact, the CFTRI, Central Food, Tropical, Crops Institute at Trivandrum, they have done a lot of work on the musa species with reference to the Indian conditions, and then again in Southeast Asia, also and some parts of Africa, they have done a lot of work. So here, the excessive collection, more than 10,500 accesses in germplasms worldwide have been so far identified, the biggest by the International Network for the Improvement of the Banana and Plantain through the INDIPAP 10%. For the many the minor tropical fruit and nut species present in the center of diversity, so I think little to done is the collect, preserve, and characterize their enormous amount of the unique genetic diversity. So that is the source of food for the local the populations. But here in India, we have already done a lot of work in the horticultural crops with reference to the tropical origin of the Indian subcontinent. We have collected and then we have still maintained many genetic material by the ICAR in India. In addition, the International Technical Conference on PGR stressed the need for every country to establish the national programs according to their scientific and financial resources to preserve such precious local the material for the future generation is. So here a lot of the fruit trees that have been already potential exploitation, which includes Artocarpus, Sulacaca, Meningifera, and then Dymocarpus, Artocarpus, and then the Canarium, and so on. These are the genus groups which belongs to the potential use of the fruit species. And then besides that imperative need of the conservation to such possible indigenous food species, the potential could be exploited. That is most important, namely as the new fruit trees, as multi-purpose trees, as rootstocks, and as a source of the germplasm for improving the existing cultivated fruit species, mainly to increase the content of the nutrient value in the most of the fruit crops. So I think next is the vegetables. So in the major section of these vegetables, more than 1,000 plants may be used as vegetables. Out of that, 350 were used as a larger scale in all around the world. And come to the vegetables in differ in the edible plant parts. It may be leaves is utilized, or buds used, or the roots as usable part, tubers, bulbs, and then stalks, sprouts, flowers, fruits, or the seeds. So in USA alone, 100 species are used as vegetables, and in India and China we have nearly more than 200 species and subspecies of the 29 different plant families are currently in use for the tropical vegetables of the conditions. So here vegetables commonly consumed on a large scale with reference to the local and regional conditions, and merely 200 to 300 species are currently in use for the resource as the vegetables. The next is the roots and tuber crops. So the potato and sweet potato belong to the crops, and potato and sweet potato belong to the most of the important crops for food energy supply and worldwide. And then also we have the sub-regional level of that in India and other countries. We have also the cassava, the maniculate, the manicot, the esculenta, and yam, Dioscorea species, which are having major food crops and represent the dietary needs of the millions of the the world's poorest family. And in addition to that, the countries like Africa, Southeastern Asia, they are also heavily dependent on the tuber crops as the source of their daily food in their consumption. So unfortunately, the tuber crops have generally been denying the infrastructure support necessary for the full promotion and development in the other countries. But in India, we have stressed more on that, and then we have a separate the Center for the Tuber Crop Research at Trivandrum, South India. So such support includes the research, dissemination, subsidies, and organized production and processing of the valuable the food and the tuber crops. The next is the plant genetic resources in the food legumes. So food legumes, above all the beans, are particularly important to food security in Central America, Africa, and then including Asia. So according to the FAO, the World Information Early Warning System, the database states that food legumes are the next largest category of the preserved germplasm. So after cereals, again which constitute nearly 15% of the global oxygen stored in the excessive conditions. So a data collection of nearly the particular species Phaseolus based on a sophisticated agroecological classifications, based on the sophisticated agroecological classification, the Latin America have been developed by CIAT in Colombia. So a lot of the wild species already have been documented with reference to the tolerance level or the resistant to the drought, heat, cold, and then disease, pest and diseases resistant species have been already developed in the Phaseolus species. So, and the next one is the medicinal, aromatic, and ornamental plants. So it also for the contribution to the health and improving the people. That's why we have been saying that lives satisfying of their aesthetic and their culinary needs of this mainly the purpose, and the existence of the undiscovered pharmaceuticals for modern medicine estimated approximately 328 drugs has been cited as one of the most important the reasons to protect these tropical forests and plant in general with reference to the medicinal and aromatic ornamental plants. So here the tropical, the equatorial countries have a rich heritage of the traditional knowledge of this use of the plant as medicine, including China and India. So many indigenous plants are known to have the diuretic, hypertensive, and then symptomatic, transculling, and then the neoplastic, anti-protozoan, insecticidal, and then aphrodisiac, and then contraceptive and anti-tumor properties. So at present, most of the medicinal plants are the plant genetic resources exist in the world as the wild and are not receiving effective attention by by the scientific community and the local governments. But area of India has taken a lead role, and through the Ayush and then also we have the ICMR, they are taking care much about the utilization of the indigenous plant genetic resources of the medicinal plants which are available, more than 8,000 species in the Indian subcontinent. So what is the urgent need? So there is an urgent need to collect the indigenous medicinal plant resources and assemble them in exclusive collections, because I think it is now because of the lot of the exploitations over the years that that population may loss. So realizing this situation, so we have to collect all the indigenous resources of the medicinal plants, and next is they botanically and taxonomically identify these resources and characterize them, and fully and properly document this information, where it's located and what is the conditions of growing, and all these things we are knowing the soil conditions in which it grows. So everything we have to document that, and then evaluate and test them for their medicinal properties with reference to the characterization, isolation, and then compounds available in that major ingredients and so on, and how far it will be useful to the various diseases before they are utilized, and establish the international collaboration particularly for the chemical analysis for their medicinal values. But even though we have in our center, we have the central the drug research center in Lucknow, CDRI we have, and then also in Pune we have. So many parts of the world in Indian subcontinent we have the testing center for calculating the information and collecting the information and then documenting the information and to know the efficacy of the phytodrugs from the various medicinal plants. The next category is the ornamental and plant genetic resources. So like the medicinal and spice species, genetic resource, the ornamental plants in developing countries grow wild in the rainforest habitats, and most of them which are been destroyed because of the massive logging operations, and thousands of the ornamental plant species have yet to discovered, identified and documented. So at present the botanical gardens are the only source of the excessive sites where ornamental plants can be conserved. So in countries rich in the diversity of the ornamental genetic plant resources includes all over, and in order to provide the easy access of all the indigenous valuable resources for the 1500 botanical gardens worldwide, this kind of information should be readily available for the utilization of the ornamental plants. So here the role of research in the conservation, characterization and utilization of the horticultural genetic diversity of the plant genetic resources. Number one is the in situ conservation. So the in situ conservation differs from the ex situ as it follows plant species to grow in the original natural environment and thus allows the evolutionary processes which are the base for the plant genetic diversity and plant adaptability to continue. So this is the status of the. Here the in situ conservation can be considered a dynamic system and most suitable to preserve the adaptability of the any types of the plant genetic resources, and mainly it allows the evolution of the population conserving the genetic variability which continues to originate from the mutations and gene flow in natural and through the pollen and seed exchange within and between the populations. So in developing countries where the land races or locally improved material are cultivated, utilized and conserved as parts of the traditional the farming system. So in addition to that, the on-farm conservation programs are particular importance in the developing countries like India, China and then other South the Asian countries, and mainly here to maintain the local genetic diversity and also to provide the food and local maintain the local genetic diversity, and also to provide the food and local consumption and local markets where the livelihoods depends on the subsistence farming. So what are the priorities for the conservation? As I mentioned, ex situ conservation with reference to the plant genetic resources, so far 6 million accessions are stored in ex situ collections. The world accessions are stored in the in situ collections worldwide, and taking into consideration duplication among collections, the estimate of unique accesses is reduced to about 1 to 2 million in this. So according to the data available from the FAO, that is World Information Early Warning System, we call it as the views, the accessions belonging to the major group of crops present in the gene banks, which comprise of nearly 40% stored in the gene banks as cereals, 15% as food legumes, and vegetables, roots and tuber crops and forages 10% each. Then aromatic, medicinal, spice, ornamental plants and seldom found in ex situ long-term public collections. So the ex situ collections are based on the final use of the accession. So base collections are intended for long-term conservation, which is very much essential for that. That's why the active collections on the other land are also used for the exchange of the genetic material and for the breeders working collection and used for the genetic improvement. So another concept of the collection is the core collection, in which it is mainly aimed to improving the management and then they aimed at improving the management efficiency and at reducing the gene bank operating costs. So the main functions of the gene bank. So the gene bank is the mainly the acquisition of the germplasm through collection missions or by the introduction from or exchange with other institutions for conservation, which includes the preparation of the material for the storage, monitoring its viability in storage and the regeneration of the accessions. So mainly it is needed for the distribution of the samples to the users. Over what they can access the materials, the original materials for the exchange, and then later they can do for the improvement activities of the plant genetic resources for the proper utilization. So the methods used for the in situ conservation, which includes the seed gene banks, and then the living gene bank, and then in vitro conservation and cryopreservation, pollen storage and conservation of the DNA. So these are the important the methods. I think we have to keep in touch with all those things for conservation, and later then how to characterize and evaluation. So adequate germplasm conservation we have been stored in the gene bank. So later it can be used as a efficient utilization requirement and accurate characterization evaluation of the material in which we are going to further explore for the exploitation and so on. So what we required minimum that has to be registered in the gene bank is which includes the country of origin, where the particular plant genetic resource material, whether it is horticultural crops or agricultural crops, with reference to the vegetables, crops, fruits, etc., etc. And then we have to certify and then we have to register as the country of origin. Then next is the collection site, where it collected, and then the species name, and the local name, and then genus name, and then again the local name. So the so-called part which is called as the passport data. So every species of these should be documented in the germplasm bank or the gene bank, and then here so extensive guidelines to record this type of the data have been published by the International Plant Genetic Resources Institute, then IPGRI, and India also we have a similar type of and then Indian Plant Genetic Resources the collection in the under the aegis of the ICAR. So the next type step is the characterization, how the phenotypic markers are being maintained, and so here mostly the biochemical markers such as enzyme, we call as isozyme, and storage proteins can increase the number of the qualitative the markers they are using. So a very detailed characterization of the diversity with reference to the various species, and then also with the use of the DNA we have to use in the molecular markers. And then next, utilization. The main goal is to be achieved by the conservation of the genetic materials or the resources is their present and future utilization for the benefit of the mankind, which includes a lot. So the examples are already available in Lycopersicon species, and then we have different types of the Lycopersicon species, and so altogether we have been using against one the major disease called the bacterial blight have been transferred from the existence of the various settings. So currently we have been using of all the plant genetic materials for future utilization for the humankind. So altogether what we require is there is a need. There is a need to collect and conserve more local germplasm from tropical and subtropical regions where they are having the very huge collections, because wild species have been documented as significant source of the genes for tolerance and resistance to the drought, heat, cold and diseases. So already it is available, and not only that, it also contains the nutrient value in terms. I think already we have screened many of the germs, plasms, materials are having rich in the mineral substance, proteins and vitamin C compared to the cultivated vegetables. So I think we have to take and then to monitor and then document all the horticultural genetic resources which may be having a useful in the breeding programs. So documentation and information, as I mentioned, we have to collect and then we have to document for all this. Next, of course, we know that we have a different types of the plant genetic resources and categories, and then we know we studied the countries of origin, what is their potential utilization, and then characterization, and how to store in the ex situ and then in situ collection, including the gene bank, etc. So next one, the major one we have to consider and we have to study is the genetic erosion. So what do you mean by genetic erosion? So the genetic erosion may be defined as a permanent reduction in the richness or the evenness of the common, the localized, the alleles, or the loss of combination of the alleles over the time in a defined area. So this is called the genetic erosion. So again, genetic erosion may be a permanent reduction in the species richness. So this definition recognizes that the diversity has two distinct components. One is the number of the different entities. Number two, their relative frequencies. It also suggests that it is specifically loss of locally adapted alleles that is most significant. So genetic erosion is important in determining the priority given to the different areas of the conservation intervention, because in long course it may disappear because of the rapid utilization, or sometimes it may lead to the genetic erosion. Whether it is, I think whether we can store it in the in situ or in situ or combination of the both. So what are the indicators of the genetic erosion? So the global plan of the action has given a priority activity on developing a monitoring and early warning system for the loss of the plant genetic resources. I think this is internationally available to know that the genetic erosion of the particular horticultural plant genetic resources. So what are the indicators? So indicators that could be measured, we can do that singly or in combinations on individuals and populations of a given species in a defined area as a part of the systematic effort to monitor the changes in the diversity in the species. So that can be monitored. So a number of the subspecies entities, the formal taxonomic categories such as subspecies, and also the entities such as ecotypes, chromosome races, and land races groups, which are all useful for the first approximates of the genetic diversity within these species. So what we required here to stress is the population size. So the numbers and isolation. So we have to study for that. So even the small populations are relatively greater risk of the loss of the alleles. And then what we required is increased the inbreeding and extinction due to the stochastic events. And then the number and isolation of the population in the area will reflect both the overall genetic diversity in the area and how this is structured. So a lot of the problems are occurred by the genetic erosion. So here the environmental amplitude is also one of the reasons. So the number of the distinct habitats or the environments in which these species is found to study in priority, and for this, for example, it based on the existing ecological and climatic the classifications variations. I say sometimes it may reflect the highly adaptive the variation. So what are the genetic variation? The experimentation, there is the protocols to identify the variation, how to conserve, and all those. So genetic diversity at the molecular level. Now the diagnostic tools for investigating the genetic variation in plants and animals are available. Number one, the molecular technique is the restriction fragment length polymerism, as called as the RFLP, the technology or the methodology. And then next is the RAPID, the RAPD, that is randomly amplified polymorphic DNA analysis. So these are the very important the technique to know the genetic variation or the diversity of the species in the plant genetic resources in the horticultural crops, etc. And then complement longer established techniques such as isozyme analysis. We can compare even within the species level, we can identify with the help of the isozyme variations through the isozyme analysis. And then very recently we have been also doing in the AFLP, that is amplified fragment length polymerism analysis and the microsatellite approaches. So these are the various the molecular techniques are now available to know the genetic diversity at the genetic level. We can know the variations, even the plants in the animals. So a lot of the quantitative genetic variation we can study. And then also, as I mentioned, even in the interpopulation genetic variations can be studied. So altogether we can study the amount and pattern of the matting, which will be helpful for inbreeding the lot of the species inside the population changes. So the different parameters that could monitored, including the outcrossing rate, the fixation index, and then fecundity, and then progeny fitness, pollinator abundance, sex ratios, and then density of the reproductive individuals. So altogether we can have the different source of the historical information be experts we can available based on the formal literature of the particular plant genetic resource, and then ethnographic details, then linguistic details, developmental details. So altogether we can know the amateur, that the explorers and the travelers list, and grey literature, remote sensing. So these are also available to know some of the historical information of the various plant genetic resources with reference to the of the analysis of the various parameters mentioned here. So it includes also the oral history and the knowledge and experience of the local people. That is the utilization by the local, even as the tribal people, can give you the importance of the cultivar or the local the plant genetic resource for information on genetic erosion at the variety level that can be monitored. So later, how the genetic erosion is mean and addressing the risk of the future. So that's why realizing this situation, the Agenda 21 states that the current decline in the biodiversity is largely the result of the human activity. So mainly the anthropogenic activities, and which represent a serious threat to the human development because of the rapid utilization of the plant genetic resources which have been stated in the Agenda 21. So here the threats faced by plant diversity, both wild and cultivated, especially for the plant genetic resources at the local level, at the national level, at the global level. That's why all the international submits by the various agencies and firms, they stress for this like WRI, IUCN, and UNEP. I think they all worked on the introduction of the new species with reference to the various conditions, and then how to conserve all those species against the various problems related to the urbanization, deforestation, overgrazing, and then which includes also various other anthropogenic the activities by the fossil fuels in the forest or in the agriculture ecosystem. That's right. So the monitoring genetic erosion by the national programs. So every country perhaps have been framed the programs, national programs individually, and they have been identifying and they have been monitoring very closely with their local plant genetic resources with reference to the spatial and temporal comparisons using a number of the indicators, and finally they are identifying the major factors that contribute to the genetic erosion in the with reference to the target gene pool according to the studies. I think still it is going on in every country. In India we have been also doing active research with reference to the agricultural and horticultural species. And then next is the mapping. Mapping of the strength of the identified putative and other causative factors of the genetic erosion is also in progress. And then setting up a network community based correspondence for continuous monitoring of the genetic diversity and genetic erosion risk has been doing, and then with the help of the monitoring the mapping. So what is the final recommendation is the framework. So information system can be developed to provide early warning of the erosion of the critical plant genetic resources. So technically speaking, it is impossible to envisage an early warning system that could incorporate all to identify the problems related to the genetic erosion. But in consequent to that, and we have been doing a lot through the remote sensing techniques and other geospatial information technologies like GIS, GPS in the support of the conventional ground-based assessment method that could efficiently provide the accurate information to know about the the genetic erosion of the particular species in the country. So I think we have been doing a lot through this system. So what the actions? So we suggest that early warning methods be developed and demonstrated. That number one, it could be implemented on the national level. Number two, that would be provide guidance on the interventions that could be pursued at the national level through a set of the pilot projects, case studies of even the individual species. So this would involve the several tasks of that one. I think number one is the requirement of the definition for the initiative information that needs for the early warning system that must be established, and then we have to study the indicators and then the system design. So altogether what we required is the pilot project region selection and then selection criteria of which regions will be selected for pilot projects, all should be studied, and then later all the regions the data will be collected, pooled, and the proper methodology will be developed for the proceeding the further steps. So the reporting of the assessment of the plant genetic resources, through the erosion, what happened is the appearance of the genetic erosion that we have to do further. So here genetic erosion or the genetic diversity can occur at two different levels: in the gene banks, we call it as ex situ collection, or in the natural environment itself. That's why we stress both in the ex situ in situ, the conservation against the loss of the particular habitat of the plant genetic resources, either through the deforestation, development, then agricultural colonization of the new lands and desertification, and then disturbance of the habitat for want of the road construction, and then new human settlements, natural disaster which include flood, drought, and then the loss of the cultivated crops. So I think against of all these barriers, either natural or the man-made barriers, against this we have to select the species and we have to conserve all the genetic resources in the ex situ or in the natural environment. So now the informations of the sources regarding the genetic erosion assessment has been doing significantly, and mainly, as I mentioned, against the loss of the genetic diversity should be recognized. So should be recognized for the want of the species, and altogether India is rich in the plant genetic resources with reference to horticultural and agricultural, the plant genetic resources, both cultivated and then also in the natural population, in the local cultivar, either local cultivar or the indigenous cultivars which are available in the wild, and altogether all the species, either cultivated or the wild cultivars, that should be assessed and documented. And then we have to, I think still we have to work more on the complete documentation at gene level, be prepared and should be stored in a common repository, and this repository should contain all the indigenous knowledge of about the plant genetic resources. So definitely this knowledge system will be useful to the future generation, either for utilization or for the research. So with this we have to conserve our plant genetic resources and then against the genetic erosion, and we should keep in every individual as citizen as a responsibility for conserving our natural resources of the biodiversity existing in the Indian subcontinent. With this, I thank you everyone for the present hearing. Save our environment and save our nation. Thank you.